First, I want you to have a brief overview look on our final setup that we will be creating. So I will be including this zip file in the downloadable contents, so you can always refer back to this file in case you get stuck somewhere. And so this is the final setup, and we can see that there are quite a few nodes that we will be creating, and depending on your current skill level in Houdini, this might look a little bit overwhelming, but I assure you that it's not. And really the only reason we have these many setups is because this effect will be a layered approach, and some of these setups are going to be very similar. So this body smoke, this setup over here, will resemble this head smoke over here, so it's largely around 80% the same, and maybe the body PRT section over here is kind of the same as this head PRT section over here. So a lot of this stuff will be very similar. So you don't have to worry about how big this node graph looks. Let's actually just start right at the top. So you will be receiving a geometry file, which is going to be this head, and this will be in the center of our scene. So you will be receiving a head, and the jaw will be a separate object which we will merge together, and the reason these are separate is because we will have to animate this with two transforms nodes, as we can see over here. So we just simply animate the mouth opening. So this will be our geometry, and then we can move over, and here we generate this curve that the skull will animate along, and from this curve we will be generating a point that moves along the curve, and our geometry will stick to this point. Then we will need to update our geosource. So if we go over here, in this setup we turn our geometry into higher resolution, which will also be animating. So if I were to turn on my wireframe view, we can see that this is a really dense geometry which started from a lower polygon geometry. And so we turn this into a high resolution, so our points on the geometry can carry a lot more information. And let's move on. Here we basically animate our geometry along the spline that we created, and we use this to generate smoke. And let's see our cached result. So here will be our smoke, and this is more or less a basic smoke simulation setup. Then we will use this smoke to advect particles, and here we have a low quality version and a high quality version. So the high quality version will have roughly, I believe, 15 million, or rather 14 million points. Alright, so the particles are advected by this smoke simulation that we created. And then we set up a separate simulation for just our head, and we can preview this over here. So we have another smoke simulation, roughly in the same manner that we create the body simulation, and we use this smoke to generate particles and advect them again only for the head. So we can preview this cached result here, and these will be our particles advected by the smoke. Over to the side we will have face particles, so again we will want even more detail for the frontal part of our skull, and we will be creating these points separately in this stream over here, which has a little bit of animation, as you can see. And then finally we take all of these and we place them together, we splice them up together over here in this merge node. And let's take a look at this. So we have our body, and we also place all of our points, so the head and the face, inside this merge node, and then we will turn these points into volumes. Okay, and then we will assign a pyrobake shader and do a lot of cool tricks here to obtain this nice scatter field. One more important thing here is going to be this deform body attribute wrangle. So this will control how our body particles will deform. So here's the code that we will be writing, and we have some settings here that now we can, for example, increase the rotation of the particles. So I can decrease this amount maybe to -5, and now we have more rotation. Or if I want to exaggerate this, I'll set this to 10. So now our particles are really spinning around the curve axis. We can also control how this scales along the curve, and maybe if I increase this ramp over here, we can see that we squeeze this more along the curve, or we can do this the other way around. And we also have a ramp for the rotation, and so we have a lot of control over how our particles deform. And so it's important to note that this will be a post-simulation effect that we will be creating. Alright, and let's see over to the side. we have a simple layer for the sparks. So this is just an extra detail to add in our render. And over to the side we have another utility pass, and this will make a lot more sense when we reach this stage. But essentially this will be a pass that we will use to color our eyes and the mouth and make this glow in our render. So this will be a quick overview over everything that we will be creating during this course, and again we will start with our next lesson right over here with importing our geometry. So let's get started.